Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at It's Let me just check everything, make sure things look right. Yep, they do. Welcome. We're back with another show. Earlier today, we talked about the match against Crystal Palace. We did a little preview, so if you haven't seen that, go ahead and watch that after this video. But on this video, we're going to be talking about some of the most recent transfer rumors that have come up in the last couple of days, what my thoughts on them are, and then we'll go over my keep or sell results. If you didn't watch the show yesterday, me and George, Harry, and Kelly did a show going through the Arsenal players and doing a kind of like a keep or sell. And they did their results, and then I'm going to go ahead and give mine today. And I'm also going to go into some of the players that I'd like to bring into the club and just kind of like finish up that entire exercise, because a lot of people are asking me who I'd want as a right back, who I'd want in center midfield. So we'll do all that great stuff today. I just want to let you guys know also that you guys are awesome. I appreciate all of your support and you liking and sharing my videos. It's been amazing. So thank you so much for that. And my goal for today's stream for likes will be 40 likes. So let's try to do that before the end of the show. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So the first rumor that I want to talk to you guys about is Sander Berge. So I think there's a lot of division in the fan base whether or not this would be a good signing or not. The link has been there for a while with Sander Berge. And I think it's because our assistant coach had coached him before. And he's also really good friends with Odegaard. So, and they're both Norwegian. Right now, Sander Berge plays for Sheffield, who is relegated and has been relegated for a while. And I'm not surprised that maybe he wants to go ahead and make a move away from Sheffield. He's a good player in my mind. I think he's a good player. 23 years old, about 6'4", 6'5", a very physical type of player. He's relatively quick for his size, which is nice. And I think if you think about him in comparison to some of our midfielders in Ceballos, El Neni, these types, I think he would add a different dimension and give us something a little bit different in that midfield area. So I'm actually just going to pull up his thing up here before we kind of, there he is. All right. So Sander Berge, 23 years old, right-footed, contract expires in June 30th, 2024. Let's see. I think Sheffield bought him from Genk for 25 million. So that's a big fee for a team like Sheffield. So I wouldn't imagine them giving him up for too little. His current market value is about 20 million. And yeah, so look, for me, this is an option that we could bring in as an option. I don't think you bring him in and you sit him next to Thomas Partey and all is well. I think we need something a little bit more of a sure thing. And you guys know I've been a big advocate of Yves Bissouma. I would only really feel like this deal would make sense for Arsenal if we brought in Bissouma and brought this guy in as well. So there's a rumor going around that we've made a $72 million bid for Sander Berge. And I don't really know if that's true or not, but if that's the figure that we were looking to get him for, I think that would be a steal if we could get that over the line. But again, because Sheffield purchased him for 25 million, even though he sat out for a large amount of time during the season, I don't think that they would accept that offer. And for 25 million, like when we start getting into the mid 20s and late 20s, 29 million, 30 million, things like that, I think now we're getting in the territory of let's bring in somebody different, because it's no longer worth it to me to bring in a player that is kind of like, he's not a sure thing, if that makes sense. So for me with this one, I'm looking at it like, if we were to bring in Bissouma and bring in this guy for a late teens, early 20s, probably a good idea. But when we start getting into those late 20s, early 30s, let's go ahead and look for somebody else. There's other teams sniffing around, which makes sense to me. Liverpool and Tottenham are interested in him too. And there's also the aspect of him wanting to understand Odegaard's future before he makes a decision on coming to Arsenal. For me, I think that's absolute crap. I don't think any player should really be making big decisions on their career based on if their best friend is going to be there. For Sander Berge, I think because he's on a relegation side, to me, you want to get off of that team, and Arsenal is a good club, is a big club. And I couldn't understand, like, so if Martin Odegaard didn't come, then you would not consider Arsenal at all. That doesn't make sense to me. So if that was like the only way that we could get him, I would say just leave him where he's at. But you guys could let me know in the chat box what you think about this guy. I think, look, as an option, yes. As the only midfielder that we bring in this summer, no, not for me. All right, so let's also talk about Bissouma. I know we've done a lot of talking about Bissouma, but I just feel like this deal is going to get done. For me, I think this is just the right move for Arsenal because, of course, there's risk with every single transfer. But with me, like at this point in Arsenal's evolution, like we need to make sure that we know what we're buying. And with Bissouma, you know what you're buying. He's a box-to-box type player that played in the Premier League proven. He's good. He's played 34. He's appeared in 34 games and he's in the starting 11 92% of the time, which means he's reliable. He's somebody that they can count on to play almost all of the games. 91% of the minutes, the guy plays every single game. And that's kind of what you need, right? You need somebody that is going to be able to stand there next to his partner, and you can count on those two being together all the time. He can play box to box as well as a true six. And I think that's something that we need. Of course, we've already kind of talked about the fact that when Thomas Partey is not in the lineup, we lose so much of our athleticism. And for me in the Premier League, that's important. I think running power and the ability to cover a lot of grass is important. So for me, having a midfield pivot of Thomas Partey and Bissouma and another rotational two or maybe one or two rotational options in there in that pivot position would be ideal for Arsenal. They bought him from Lille, who has amazing recruitment, for about 18 million. His current market value is 18 million, but we know we're going to have to spend a lot more than that. And I think, right here it's saying that Brighton set the $40 million asking price for Bissouma, and I think that's about what it's going to take to get him. If like somebody like Ndidi was playing better, if there was more of these types of players at this level on the market, I would say yes. Like we could probably get him for less. But when you look at players in that position across the different leagues, you have somebody like Zakaria, and then you have Ndidi as well, people that you would probably compare him to. Neither of them have had amazing seasons. I think Bissouma is the hot commodity right now, and that's why we would have to pay a premium. But that being said, Premier League proven, reliable in terms of the amount of games that he'll play, relatively, a good injury record, meaning he doesn't get injured very often. 24 years old, that good age. We don't actually need more players in that 19 to 21-year-old range. We need people that are a little bit older than that. And by the time he's in his prime, hopefully we'd be in a position where we're a better team. So for me, this makes a lot of sense. I really think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm really hoping we get this over the line. So you guys let me know. There's also rumors going around that he's already signed personal terms with Arsenal, which isn't. It would be an indicator of his want to be at the club, but not necessarily an indication of the deal getting done, because you can pretty much sign personal terms with anybody without any consequences. But if that were true, that would be amazing. So you guys let me know in the chat box what you think about that. And yeah, hold on. And the next rumor that I kind of wanted to talk about is Jack Grealish. Now, I don't know where this rumor is coming from. It doesn't really seem like there's not a lot of legs to it. It just seems like that's somebody that we want as fans. So we're trying to create links. There are like rumors going around that we're serious about him, but that $80 million price tag slash 85 slash whatever, 80 million is too much. I just don't think we're in a position to get that done. That being said, I think that's the type of player that would fit in well with us. That's the type of player that would take us to the next level, but we haven't even built our foundation yet. So to bring in somebody like that, I think would be a little bit like we're that's like 2 or 3 steps in our like further along in our evolution. That's not what we can do now. But I know a lot of people want Grealish. I just don't see it happening. Not because I don't think he would come to Arsenal, but I just think we're a little bit far away from that. So those are the most current rumors. You guys also know that Willian has been rumored to leave, but we're not really sure if that's going to happen or not. David Luiz is going to leave the club. I think that's good. I really, really do. So yeah, let me read some of these comments out. Let's see. Let me go back up to the top. MTR said, would be a good signing to replace Xhaka, but Bissouma is a must. Yep. Yo-Yo says, Fulham, Sheffield, Sunderland signings. I don't want any more excuses made for this the manager. Southampton, not Sunderland. Yeah. Barry says, if Berge comes, does that mean Arteta has his heart set on still getting Odegaard? I mean, that may be, but I just think this whole like besties have to be at the same club thing is just a little bit like pre-primer for me. It's just a little bit preschool for me. I'm just like, whatever, you know. But yeah, I think it has to be separate. You have to actually like Sander Berge. It can't just be, well, because, you know, if we bring in Odegaard, it would make it easier for us to get Sander Berge, when ideally, if we were to get Odegaard, I'd still want Bissouma instead of him, if that makes sense. AK Gunner says, one of 2 midfielders we need to buy has to be high chance creator and goal scorer. So it's Bissouma or Sander Berge, not both. That's a very, very good point. Ryan Robles says, profile alone is a good move. It's a good move. Even if it doesn't work out, it's good to know Arsenal are targeting players of that profile. If you're talking about Sander Berge, what I do like about it is that it's not really a super risky move, because if it doesn't work in 2 years, we could sell him, which is better than bringing in players in their prime and then, you know, you can't get rid of them. That's a really good point. Zach says, hey, Flower, hey. Me and the missus love your content. Keep it up. Always appreciate it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Flossneck says, only as an addition, not needed runner in the midfield, but I'm not completely against it. Yep. Let's see. Yo-Yo says, Arsenal don't have the money to get Bissouma, Grealish, and a right back and a center back. Paper talk. Exactly. So let's move on to my results for the keeper sell drill. So that was a game that me and some of the guys played, and I thought it turned out really, really good. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. It was really, really good. They had such good insight on different players and why we should keep them, why we should loan them out. It was a very well thought out version of a keeper sell, and I really liked that. We had rules involved and all that, so we made it a little bit more realistic. And I didn't get to share my results, so I'm going to share them with you right now. All right. So going back to kind of the game that we were playing, these are the players that were potentially staying, right? And we made the caveat that Bernd Leno, which I think now we can kind of say is probably will stay, and then Matty Ryan, we're just assuming that the club does the right thing and brings him in, but he is one of my incomings anyway. And then you have Renarson. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But Aubameyang, Martinelli, Saka, Mill Smith-Rowe, Thomas, El Neni, Tierney, Cedric, Marie, Gabriel, Saliba, and Chambers. Those are players that are either important to the rebuild or have not been linked with serious moves away, right? So these are the players that I decided to keep. Again, the rules were that you have to keep 5, loan 3, and sell 7. So these are the players that I chose to keep. Now, before you guys batter me, I have a reason for keeping Lacazette. I do. I know we'd have to extend him. I know that ideally we'd need to get rid, but I have a good reason, or in my mind, a good reason why I want to keep Lacazette. Nicola Pepe, even if a $40 million offer came in for him, I think we need to keep him for versatility. He scores goals, and I think he could be used a lot better than the way that Arteta is using him at the moment. Willock is here as well. I kept him for homegrown numbers, as well as the fact that I think we could still sell him in the future. And because I don't believe that the club is going to be able to bring in multiple midfielders, I think he'd be a good player to keep around just for the moment. I know it's probably a really good time to go ahead and move him on, but I just think that he could use him a little bit better, and he has some qualities that we don't necessarily have in the squad. And I'm all about versatility, having different profiles of players, and having flexibility in the way that we play in terms of our formations and our tactics. I also kept Granit Xhaka. Everybody kept Granit Xhaka. I actually had him as a sell, but I switched it up a little bit because I think the balance of my squad is going to be really good keeping him for another year or so. And Rob Holding I kept because we're not going to be getting a right-sided center back. So you guys can go ahead and tell me that I'm crazy, but I have good reason. My squad is very balanced, and when you guys see the starting lineup, you guys will be like, wow, we're winning the league. So just give me a minute. All right, so these are the players that I want to loan. Because I'm keeping Lacazette, I'm mostly keeping him for the fact that we can extend him and sell him later, but I want to be able to loan Balogun. And the reason why is because the striker choices that are out there in the market right now don't fill me with a lot of excitement. I don't really think I want to rush out and get another striker because I want to give Balogun an opportunity to become the number 9 once Aubameyang is gone. So the only way that we can know if he's going to be good enough is if he goes out on a loan and plays first team football. If he stays and he plays behind Martinelli and Aubameyang, I think that if we don't have Europe, he won't get enough minutes. And so for me, I would loan Balogun out, keep Lacazette for a year, then let Lacazette go and bring Balogun in next season to play under Aubameyang. Aubameyang stays for another year, leaves the year after, and then Balogun and Martinelli are there. Nelson, I think everybody else sold him. I'm keeping him and I'm giving him a loan because I just feel like I know he's made mistakes, but he's a player that has a lot of potential. And I think he needs to go out on loan and get kind of like the same boost that Willock got. So we can see what type of player that he is and also try to drive up his value, because 10 million for me is not enough for me to sell Reiss Nelson at the moment. So I don't think it would hurt to give him a loan, see what happens. Maybe he could come back into the squad, or we could drive up his value and maybe get 20 million for him. You never know. Mavropanos, I think we all kind of, we wouldn't keep him in the squad, but we'd loan him out again to Stuttgart. And then after that, they need to go ahead and buy him. Those are the players that I decided to loan. So now let's get to the players. Actually, let's get to your comments. I want to see if you guys are bashing me yet. Let's see. All right, what are you guys saying? Don Giovanni says we have Saliba, Chambers, and Mavropanos for right-sided center back. Yo-Yo said Nelson's value is on the floor. I mean, literally, he's 10 million to me. I think we could just give him give him a loan and see what happens after that. We can still sell him after, but let's drive up his value a little bit. I think there's other players that we can sell for actual fees so that we can use it for transfers. Nelson, let's just give him another chance. Let's give him a chance to go out. Varun says Darwin Nunez would be my shout to replace Laka. To be honest, when I saw him play for Benfica against us, I thought he was poor. He's just not somebody that I would want to bring in. And again, I'm just saying from my perspective, the strikers that are out there in the market are either ones that we're not going to be able to get. And I think I want to give Balogun an opportunity to see if he can be that number 9, because I think he's that talented. Giovanni says, if we just gave Nelson game time this season instead of Willian, we could have gotten 20 million. That's true. But let's course correct now, give him the loan and see what happens from there. Dublin Gunner says, I get the homegrown argument for Willock, but I just don't think he'll ever be worth more than he is right now. So it's a sell for me. I understand 100%. I may be making a mistake here, but when I look at the balance of the squad that I put together, I think it works, and you can always sell Willock next season. AK Gunner says spot on Nelson on loan just to increase his value, but I do not think he will make it at Arsenal. And if he doesn't, if you give Reece Nelson the same amount of time that you gave Willock for a loan, let's see what happens. Let's just see what happens. But again, some of these are just from the simple fact that I know that we're going to be in enough competitions where we're going to need to rotate. The African Cup of Nations is coming around, so we need to make sure that we have depth in midfield. And midfield, to me, has been an area of weakness, and I'd like to see us kind of shift the balance of the squad, get more midfielders in, kind of spread everything out. So I've kept Willock and I've kept Xhaka for those reasons. All right, so let's get to the fun part. All right. So the first player that obviously I'm going to be bringing in is Yves Bissouma. We don't have to go into great depth about this, but I just think it just makes sense to me. So I'd be bringing him in. He'd be my first signing. And for 40 million, I think that that's a good price for somebody of his quality. There's not much more that I really need to say. You guys knew I was going to put him in there. So perfect midfield partner for Thomas Partey, can play with or without him, could be box to box or CDM. So this is the guy that I'm bringing in for my midfield position. And again, just back to kind of like what our rules were, is that we wanted to bring in a center midfielder, a creative midfielder, a right back, a left back cover, and an attacker / striker. And I kind of manipulated the rules a little bit so I could get what I wanted. You guys will see why, because my team is popping, you guys. My team is really, really good. All right. So we said that we wanted to bring in an attacker and a creative midfielder. So my attacker, let's go to my attacker. Actually, my attacker is going to be Eze from Crystal Palace. Now, you're probably saying, isn't he going to be the creative midfielder? He's not, because I think he's similar to Emile Smith-Rowe. And again, one of my biggest things is I want to have flexibility, and I want my players to be able to play multiple positions, different parts of the field, and be able to offer certain things so that we can play in different formations in different ways and different tactics. I think Eze really fits that. A lot of people are really high on him. This should say 30 million, not just 30, obviously. But Eze is the type of player that can play similarly, in my eyes, to Emile Smith-Rowe. I think he can be converted into somebody that could play as one of the three. He can play a 10 role. He can play off of the wings, and he offers you a lot. So for me, this is a player that I think at 22 years old is somebody that we should bring in, or we could bring in. I think he was brought in. Let me see. Let me make sure. I think we would have to offer them 30, 35 million, something like that, 30 million to get that deal done, because they brought him in for 19. So if we offer them like 30, 35, we might be able to get it done if he wanted to go. But this is a player that I think would fit in perfectly with the group that we already kind of have. And he's going to be the attacker that I bring in. He's creative, he's flexible, he can do multiple things, so let me know what you guys are thinking about Eze in the chat. Let's see. Dev says Eze is a good shout. Barry says, imagine Eze was on our books as a kid. Exactly. That's a really good point. But I think maybe sometimes you can't see the talent until a little bit later. So I wouldn't hold that against our academy for not being able to identify him as somebody that could maybe play for our first team. But I think regardless of that, I think the kid is perfect to kind of fit in with that group of Emile Smith-Rowe, Pepe, Saka, that group, and play all together in those positions right behind the striker. Eze will be run into the ground like ESR Saka. Arteta is a defensive manager. Let's see. Brian says Eze fits the profile, makes tons of sense for me. Leon says, I don't think we need Eze. He's 23 next month and only has 4 goals this season. We have better wingers, in my opinion. Well, my thing is I'm not taking away any wingers. I'm adding somebody with different qualities that we don't already have. He's good on set pieces. And I think he would just, when you guys see my lineups, you'll understand a little bit more. But if you look at the way Man City plays, they have probably a bunch of players that you would look at. And if you had bought one, you'd probably think you don't need the other. But you need different players that can give you autonomy, but as well as something different. And I think he does that. He can play deep in the midfield. He can play off of the left as a winger or more like a creative attacking forward or through the center. So for me, that's the player that I would want to bring in. And you guys, I sold. So just to go back a little bit, I sold the players that I sold. I only made 90 million off of that. So that plus what I'm going to assume that I'm going to get from KSC is 40 million. So I have 130 to spend. So keep that in mind. So I'm not getting Grealish. All right. So I don't have that type of cash. So the next player that I'm going to bring in. So I told you that I kind of fudged the rules a little bit. I said I was going to bring in an attacker and I was also going to bring in a creative midfielder. So my creative midfielder, who's, don't kill me, I know he's not a 10, but he adds a little bit of more creativity and ball progression through the midfield. I'm bringing in Awa. At 30 million, I think the guy would give us, again, something different in those deeper positions in midfield. He also is somebody that can play off of the left in a more progressive position. I've seen him play left wing, left midfield too. And I just think he would give us something else different. If you have Bissouma and you have Thomas Partey, then you can rotate Aouar with them. And if you keep Xhaka, you can rotate Xhaka in those positions as well. So you have a good rotation of players that offer something different. And for me, this is a player that I'll bring in at 30 million. That's a steal. I know he's had a pretty crap season with Leon, but the guy, he's good. He's mustard. I think he would be fine. He's 23 years old or something like that. Again, a good age. There is some questions about his attitude maybe, but besides that, I like the guy. So he's going to be my creative midfielder that I'm bringing in. I know he's not a 10, but he helps you progress the ball. He can create chances. We've seen that when he played in the Champions League. And again, he's a player that can play in multiple positions, and that is my requirement. Multiple positions can give you different dynamics in different situations, plug and play. I love it. So you guys let me know what you guys think about Awa. We're just going to keep this ball rolling. So the next player that I'm going to bring in is going to be my right back. My right back is Max Aarons. I don't think we can find a better option unless you're looking in like the Bundesliga maybe for some more obscure options. Max Aarons for me is good for homegrown quota. Plays hard. I think he has that grit and fire that we don't really have in our team. And he gives you the Tierney effect on the right-hand side. So for me, I think this is just Max Aarons for 25 million. I don't think you can do much better. I know earlier some people were saying Lamptey. His injury gives me a little bit of pause on him. And Emerson Royale is probably going to go to Villarreal. So I think this is a good option. So you guys let me know what you think about Max Aarons. All right, let's see what you guys are saying. Dubois at Lyon. I have seen him play. I think he's pretty good as well. Well, we've never even been linked with him, have we? Berge is better than Bissouma. Hey, if that's your thoughts, then hey. Olivier says, I agree with Aouar. GK says, this is why elite clubs get all the best players and dominate. Yoya says, Aouar would speak the Francophone players in the squad with the and stay clear of Arteta's nonsense. Okay. Gogo says 130 mil is not so big. I tried to keep it as realistic as possible, you guys. When I sold the players that I sold, I only made 90 million. And I don't think KSC, I don't think we can plan on them giving us 100 million. I think 40 million is realistic. So 130 that you can get the job done. I'm going to get the job done, but I'm not going to be able to buy any really huge players. You know, I'm trying to be as smart as possible with the money that I have. So now that being said, Ryan Bertrand is going to be my right back. I know, boomy, you guys can put thumbs down in the comments. I know, lazy recruitment, but because I already ran out of like a lot of my money trying to bring in my more offensive players, this is the guy I'm going to go for. I think you can make arguments for why this is a bad deal and why it's a good deal, but I think left back cover helps with the homegrown quota, has played in the Premier League. Hopefully he just doesn't end up like Willian, and that's just what I'm going to hope for the future, because I think this guy is going to be at Arsenal. And last but not least, our backup goalkeeper is going to be Matty Ryan. I think this would be really, really smart for Arsenal to go ahead and get done. He won't be free. I think he'll be about $5 million from Brighton, and I think that's good for a backup goalkeeper that we trust and wants to be at the club and knows his role. So, yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. So you guys can let me know what you think about that. So with all the transfers that I brought in, that's what it's looking like, 130 million based on the prices that I think what it would take for us to get those players. We were able to bring in Eze, Max Aarons, Awa, Bertrand, Matty Ryan, and Bissouma. So those would be my transfers in. I think even though I fudged the rules a little bit, when you guys see the lineups that I put together, my mock lineups, I think you'll understand why I did it this way. Instead of getting like a striker. And remember, Balogun will be out on loan, so he'll be getting like really good experience. And that works for me. And maybe he comes in next season. Let's see. Don Giovanni said Bertrand will not be free at all. Given Edu and Arteta's history, he'll be on a high salary with exorbitant agent and signing on fees, and he will decline in value from day one. Look, it's not innovative or anything like that. Maybe they have learned from the past. We just have to hope so. But I just think he's going to end up at the club anyway, so. Boo. I know I'm going to get booed. I knew I was going to get booed. I get it, you guys. It's not innovative or anything like that. But when we come back on Monday and the guys come back on, Harry will be back on, George will be back on, and Kelly. And I'm sure they'll have better options for that left back cover position than I do. So maybe they can give me some better, more interesting options there. Brian says, Bertrand sounds like a good move if it isn't on high wages, if it's a short deal, if we make a bunch of other better moves. When you have to rationalize a decision based on other factors, it's trouble, in my opinion. All right, so now, here we go. So, based on who I was able to bring in, this is one of the two of the lineups that I've been able to put together. So, this is if we wanted to play a 4-3-3. This is if we wanted to play a 4-2-3-1. So, in the 4-3-3, we'd have Leno, Aaron, Saliba, Gabriel, and Tierney. This can obviously be holding. It is what it is. And then in your midfield, you would have Awa, you'd have Bissouma, and you'd have Thomas Partey. I think that's a really, really good, solid midfield three. And then we could play Bukayo Saka, Smith Rowe, and Aubameyang. Now, if you wanted to play a 4-2-3-1, same back line. You could play Thomas and Bissouma in the double pivot. You could play Eze in front of them with Martinelli or Pepe, Saka, or Emile Smith-Rowe, whatever you chose, and Lacazette. So we have options. And that's something that's really important to me, especially when people get injured it's not like they're going to have this long preseason and everything is going to be okay. There's going to be tournaments interrupting our season. So for me, I think we need to keep as many of our best players. Like, we have to keep the balance right and make sure that when these situations happen, we won't be like, without Thomas, everything falls apart. So let me know what you guys think about those two options for lineups. No Fabian Ruiz or Benacer. Not a bad summer if it happens. Yeah, you guys, let me know what you guys think of those. So, and then I came up with two more. So let's say during AFCON, we lose El Neni, Bissouma, Aubameyang, and Thomas Partey. You would still be able to put out pretty much your same back line. You could put Xhaka here with Awa, and you could put Willock because I kept Willock. And then you could play Smith Rowe, Saka, Lacazette. You still have options. And if you wanted to move to a 3-4-3, you could play Leno, Holding, Saliba, and Gabriel. You could take Thomas Partey out, put a wall with Bissouma, Aarons and Tierney in the wingback positions, Saka, Eze, Lacazette. So you have a lot of different options. And I think that leaves us in a position where we're not vulnerable to not having enough options when people are missing. That would take away some of the Ceballos type scenarios that we have, or things like that. So what do you guys think? That's a 5th place team. Which one is a 5th place team? You think it's 5th place? Really? You guys saying they're decent. You guys, come on, give me a little bit more credit than that. These lineups are not, these are good. These are not, okay, they're probably 5th place, but like realistically, with 130 million, which is more likely, let's just remember, you guys, I tried to keep it as realistic as possible. We're not going to be able to sell like 12 players. If we sold 7 and we kept 5 of what we have, this is kind of realistic to me, that we would bring in 5 players. We wouldn't be able to bring in like a Grealish or somebody like that. I'm just trying to keep it real. So if this takes us from 9th, 10th place up to 5th, I'd take that. I would take that. Let's see. We are Arsenal fans. We have been crushed from optimism. Rodeo Boy says, well, 5th is better than 9th, so I'll take it. GK says, I rate Awa, but he's not at that level. Richard says, quite good, Jess, except for Laka. Look, I kept Laka because I just want to loan Balogun out. I mean, you could sell Lacazette and keep Balogun, and then that would give you some more money. But just for me, I would just keep him because I don't like the striker options that are out there. I don't think if you have $35 extra or 35 million or 25 million from Lacazette, that you're getting the type of striker that would get you guys out of your seat. That's just how I kind of think about it. But also, you guys, I just wanted to show you guys this as well, is that I made my homegrown quota as well with this. So if we take out Renarson and we put a Kwanku in there, I know I probably spelled his name wrong, but Aarons, Bertrand, Eze, Willock, Smith Rowe, Holding, Chambers, and a Kwanku, I make my homegrown quota, which is something that I don't think a lot of fans take into consideration. We need to make sure we make it. It's going to be more and more difficult to recruit players from Europe. We're going to need to make sure that we have that homegrown quota up there. And so that's pretty much, as good as I could personally do. I know some of you guys are like, that's only going to get you 5th place, but hey, 5th place, that's better than what we've been. That's better than what we've been. Let's see. Flossneck said, I take this now over what Adu will do. I mean, hey, Adu probably won't do this. And, I think it's easier said than done. There's so many different scenarios that could happen. If Xhaka wanted to leave, that would change things. If Lacazette doesn't want an extension, that could change things. But for me, that's the type of team that I would be excited to see. It may not be, it's not the finest, it's not the final destination. We're not going to be able to get everything done in one season or in one summer window. But if we were able to improve ourselves that much, I would be ecstatic by that. I really, really would. Dublin Gunner says, even an AFCON lineup, you covered all the bases. Exactly. That scares me. It scares me, you guys, to be sitting in a place where we don't have Thomas. And if we would bring in Bissouma, then what? What happens then? What happens then? El Neni, he'll be gone as well. Let's see. All right, you guys, you want to do some Q&A? Go ahead and get your questions out there. You guys are battering me for bringing Lacazette or keeping Lacazette. Yeah, maybe if I look back on it, I wouldn't keep him, but hey. GK says, Fabian Ruiz is a different level from Bissouma, Partey, whoever, Zanderberg. I like Fabian Ruiz. I really, really do. But I think he might be one of those players do you think that he would, unless he played for like Pep, I'm not quite sure that his quality would transfer over to the Premier League. I think he's been really good for Napoli. I feel like he's the type of player that would do well at like Barcelona or Real Madrid or a team like that. I'm just not sure if he's somebody that I would bring into the Premier League. That's just me though. Dublin Gunner says, if we kept Odegaard, would you swap him for Awa or Eze? I mean, if we kept Odegaard, then yeah, I would have to get rid of one of them. But I think you need somebody like Awa to be honest. I think we need something else in those like 8 positions that can play a little bit deeper and progress the ball, also create. So I would think I would get rid of Eze because Smith Rowe can do something similar. But I personally, at this point, I'm not keeping Odegaard, and I'm not convinced that we'd even be able to get him. Brian Robles asks, what do you think of Partey, Bissouma, and Zakaria midfield? I think it would work well to counter press and retain possession. Then we'd play ESR and Saka on the wings, or is it too redundant? I think that would be just a little bit too redundant. I think you need something different in there to break up that. Partey, Bissouma, Zakaria, it's not defensive, but it's kind of like a destroyer type. It's a busy one. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Liverpool did something like that because a lot of their midfielders are like workhorses. Not quite sure if that would work for us. So I think you need somebody else in there. And that's where I'd add somebody like an Eze or an Awa to break that up a little bit. But I like all 3 players, just not all together. Yo-Yo says, do you think any of the players linked with the club have the ability to switch play like Xhaka or Luiz? That Anderson does. Joaquin Anderson. I mean, all of his highlights are of him kicking the ball from one side of the field to the other from the right hand side. So I do think that he would have that, which is something that Arteta likes. He mentioned that about Virgil van Dijk having that. That switch of play is something that's really dangerous and can put you in a good position. So Joaquin Anderson definitely does have that. Other than that, no. I don't really see it, but that's a good point. Do you guys know of any other players that have that big switch? Joaquin Anderson is the only person I know that does it on a regular basis. The only reason why I didn't pick Buendia, AK, is because I couldn't afford him. I wanted to make sure that I can get multiple types of players. And the thing about Buendia for me is that I think he displaces Saka, and I think we have Saka and Pepe that both play on the right-hand side. So for me, I chose to bring in Eze and Awa so that I could get kind of like I could get some more options. But Buendia, you could put him in there too. But like, what is Norwich going to ask for? 45 million? But Buendia is a good player. I would take him. I'm just not sure that you could actually play him in the 10 role or as a progressive 8. I think he can only play off of the right-hand side. Heisey says, it's completely inexcusable to get 5th no matter our state. We fired our greatest ever manager for that. But that said, do you have faith in Arteta will do it next season? I have to see the transfers first. I mean, from what I've seen so far, no. If I see some transfers come in, maybe. Everything is like, it's so inconclusive at the moment. 5th place is inexcusable for Arsenal based on our history, but based on where we are right now, there's a difference between Arsenal in reality and Arsenal based on our history. Arsenal historically, if you think about what we've achieved in our elite status, we should never be 5th. We should always be challenging for titles. But right now we're mid-table-ish type of team. On a good day, we look like a 6th place team. On a bad day, we could look like anywhere like 12th. So based on where we are now, since we can't get out of 8th, 9th place, if next season we were in 5th, that would be progress, but not good enough based on our history, if that makes sense. Do I have faith that Arteta can do it? No. Right now, even though I hope that Arteta can do better, if you ask me what I think will happen is I think he'll get sacked. I just haven't seen enough from him. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand right now. I need to see the transfers. He'd need his preseason. And then if we start off bad, then he'll be out. Barry says, "Were you worried about Arteta's comments over Saliba today? Not exactly the most committed sounding quotes." I mean, he never sounds committed about young players. He always sounds really committed over the older ones. I mean, they asked him about Willian, and he said anybody who has a contract will be here, blah 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 blah. But then when they asked him about Saliba, he was very, I got to see him first, and then we'll make a decision and wah wah wah. I think he's going to wait and to see if we have enough money to buy a right-sided center back. I said that earlier that I don't think he's completely bought into Saliba, and that's unfortunate because the guy's really good. But we'll just have to see. We'll have to see. But it didn't sound committed. I agree with you. Let's see. Yo-Yo says, does it sadden you to think that a lot of the players who've been reported to depart likely won't leave as Arsenal fans? A lot of the players who've been rumored or reported to depart. So like Xhaka, maybe like a Lacazette, David Luiz, they'll leave and they're not actually Arsenal fans. Does it sadden me? No, to be honest. So my thing is that I just think they don't feel like Arsenal players to me. So I have no connection to them whatsoever. So if they left and I never heard about them or from them ever again, I wouldn't care because this era of players are not Arsenal players to me. Mustafi, Kolasinac, Socrates, Lichtsteiner, Aubameyang, Lacazette. I mean, all of them. Xhaka, that whole group that's kind of come in the last 5 years for me. David Luiz are not Arsenal players to me. So if they left and they weren't Arsenal fans, I wouldn't care. It's not like the years where we had players that even if they were only here for 3 years, they were still like Arsenal fans and they were like cult heroes like Podolski. They're not even that. They're just, their time at Arsenal has been about getting an astronomical wage for basically achieving nothing and being ready to go as soon as the shit hits the fan. So for me, I don't care, if they're Arsenal fans when they leave because they're not Arsenal players to me anyway. Does that make sense? I just don't rate this group. And I felt more disconnected from this group than I've ever felt from a group of Arsenal players. Like when Monreal left and Sanya left, like there were some players in there that even though they may not have been the best, Koscielny, they were like Arsenal players because you could tell that they were giving 110%, even if their level wasn't high enough. These guys to me have just been kind of like taking the mick for years now. So for me, no. Aslan says, I'm sorry, Jess, but I'd hire and fire you from director of football role on the same day after suggesting to keep Chambers and Holding. I mean, you keep Chambers and Holding because you guys keep forgetting about the homegrown rules, the homegrown quota. You have to meet it. So it's not about keeping them because they're super good. It's that we're not going to be able to get rid of half of our squad. I think the idea that we're going to be able to get rid of 15 players is so unrealistic. So for me, completely deadwood players for me are players that don't want to be at Arsenal, don't have a future at Arsenal, and have some sort of sell-on value. And we're only going to be able to sell a couple of those. Chambers and Holding have value because they're homegrown. So they would be the next ones on my list to move on. But I'm not keeping them over players that are better than them. I'm keeping them because we need to keep our homegrown quota up. And the players that I sold were just based on, I don't think they have a future. I couldn't see them in rotation. They're not homegrown. I just have to do what I got to do. But yeah, you can sack me. It is what it is. AK Gunner says, Edu needs to instruct Arteta about value destruction. Our assets of Saliba, Guendouzi, and Pepe need to be used. We talked about that the other day. Asset destruction and value destruction is something that I don't think Arteta looks at. I don't think he has grasped it because it's like I treat all of these players the same way. And it's something that really bothers me because it's like Guendouzi at one point was worth like almost 50 million. Now we're going to be selling him for like 15 and we bought him for 8. And anything that you make over what you bought him for is fine. But like at the same time, it's like, we could have made a lot more if we hadn't like completely shut him out. So yeah, I agree with that. GK says 90% of these players are crap. Yeah, they're not good enough. Aaron says only academy players really care. That's very true. It wasn't until Saka came through and Emile Smith-Rowe came through, Martinelli came, that I started to feel more connected to the players and started caring. Kieran Tierney. So there is a handful of players that I actually care about. But before that, it was like, these are not Arsenal players. They're just not. They don't put on that jersey and they're just like, whatever, this could be the Armani shirt that I just took off a couple of minutes ago. This is an Arsenal kit. Like, this is the Arsenal badge. Like, you play like you don't care. And I know you're not supposed to read into body language, but I've seen many of these players just kind of do one of those. And once you do that a couple of times, I'm just like done with it all, to be honest. GK says the elite have a different IQ. True. Barry says, wow, Brighton are beating City 3-2 after trailing 2-0. City have had a player sent off. So they had Cancelo sent off, and then so now Brighton is winning. How's Bissouma playing, you guys? Let me know. Yo-Yo says, interesting answers. Are you still connected to Arteta, and what would make you feel differently? Look, so if you want to talk about disconnection from Arsenal and Arsenal players, Arteta was a player that I never liked. I was upset when we brought him in because I just felt like this guy, he's an Everton like legend, but he's not good enough for us. I didn't think he was ever good enough. I thought he was slow. He reminded me of Xhaka, but he has 2 feet. So in regards to being connected to Arteta, no, not really. I don't think I'll ever be connected to a manager the way I was about Arsene. Those days are over. I think at this point you become more connected with managers that are doing better. I think there was like an instant connection from Chelsea fans with Tuchel because he started winning right away. With Arteta, it's a little bit more difficult because he fed us a lot of lip service and then he's not really delivering on that. So until he starts delivering on that philosophy that he talked about when he first came to Arsenal, he talked about his philosophy and the way he wanted to play. And we start to hit some of those benchmarks that he talked about. We start to be more competitive. We score more goals. We're more threatening. Then maybe I'd feel a little more connected to him, but it'll be nothing like the way that we were connected to Arsene. Nothing. And even towards the end of Arsene, I started disconnecting from him because I wanted to win. And I saw that he was blocking us from being able to reach our potential. If I didn't know at the time that him leaving would essentially just detach the glue from everything and it would fall apart. But if we had brought in a better manager and we started winning right away, then it would have been better. But I haven't been connected to a manager since Arsene, and I don't think I ever will. I will like them if we win. That's pretty much what it's coming down to for me. Win more. Brian says, what players does Arteta need to make it work with next season no matter what? Saliba, Pepe. I think he has to give him a real chance. He needs to start working on Martinelli. That's why I'm saying he's not going to be able to work on Martinelli and Balogun at the same time because we'll need somebody in there that can just kind of score goals and has experience. And I think if you buy a striker, you instantly block their path. So I'm saying you need to work on Martinelli in the background and let Balogun go on loan. You need to make Saliba work because if you don't get a right-sided center back, that's not an excuse to continue to play holding. And Pepe, 100%. And he needs to also not overuse Bukayo Saka. He is on track with having some of the same numbers and minutes in his leg as Bellerin. One injury to players like that could end their whole career. So those are the players that I think he needs to make it work with and players that he needs to maybe use in a different way. Barry Burns says Chelsea had 2 more goals disallowed versus Leicester tonight. Oof. GK says, we don't want the best players, and it shows. I mean, I think your definition of the best players differs from maybe mine, because for me, I'm thinking more of player profile. I think you're only as strong as the system that you play and the amount of players that you have in that system that can perform at a high level on a consistent basis. So you can have the best players based on how much they cost and how shiny and new and exotic they are. But if they don't fit in the system and they can't perform at a high level in that system consistently, it doesn't matter. So I'm just thinking of players that we can afford, we can attract, and that would fit in our system and give us some flexibility. If I felt like we could get Grealish, yeah, for sure, that's the player that I would want. If I felt like we could get Lewandowski, of course, that's what I would go for. But realistically, that's just not what I think about. And I think the players that I selected and the team that I put together is much better than what we have now. And I also only spent 130 million, and I got rid of a lot of the players that were more dead wood. So I think it was fine. I think it was fine. Yeah, I'm happy that bad things are happening to Chelsea. Their fans are unbearable. They really, really are. I mean, some of them are like super nice, but like others of them are just like, no. Let me just check the score since you guys are talking about it. We'll get out of here in a second. Tomorrow, instant reaction after the Crystal Palace game, of course. And that'll be pretty much it for tomorrow, unless I decide to do something before. I'm not sure. I may do something random right before. Let's see. AK Gunner said, how did you end up watching football? Did you used to play? Why do you support Arsenal? Yeah, so I did used to play. Let me see. I might be able to pull up the picture and show you guys. You guys won't believe that it's me. Let me pull out my phone real quick. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see it. And maybe I'll post it up too. It's kind of embarrassing though. I don't know if you guys will want to see it. You guys probably will because it's embarrassing. Let me find it. Okay. You guys can you kind of see that, you guys? I know you guys can barely see that. You see that? That's me doing a corner. Can you see that? That's me. So yes, I did used to play. That's how I started, like that's how I got into it. I played from like 6 all the way through college and or university. And I started supporting Arsenal because I actually loved to watch. A lot of the girls that I played with didn't actually watch, but I actually loved it. And I started to follow the MLS and the US women. And then in America, they started to show some of the bigger teams in the Premier League. At that time, it was Manchester United and Arsenal. And I fell in love with Arsenal because there were so many Black players that were amazing, and for me, always being like the only Black kid in my class, Black kid on my team, that was really influential for me. So for me, that's how I started to support Arsenal, and I never looked back. I could play right back for you. Yes, I could. Not left because I'm right-footed, but I could take a mean corner, and I was also a pretty good defensive center midfielder. Yes, I was right-footed, or I am right-footed. So yeah, if I can ever find my college recruitment video, I will show it to you guys. When I was younger, he was asking what position I played when I was younger. I played forward. And as I got older, they moved me into the midfield. I played like a defensive center midfielder. I was an attacking midfielder. And then when I got into college, I played like right back. So I would either play in the midfield or right back. So those are the positions that I played. Exactly. Yes, better corners than Willian. My corners got past the first man. They did. All right, you guys. So I'll see you guys tomorrow after the Crystal Palace game, unless something changes. Immediately following the game. So they always happen like right after the game. And unless something changes, I decide to do something before then. If you're subscribed to the channel, you will know because you'll get a notification. Dink. So make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel before you leave. And don't forget to leave me a comment. If I didn't get to yours, just put it in the comment section. And I'll answer it for you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Just finished watching the footy. I'll be on Twitter, hopefully laughing at Chelsea. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.